and welcome to the Unreal Engine editor. So this piece of software is what game developers are going to use to create and configure assets and build their worlds for the players. So let's learn a little bit about it before we get stuck in. Our objective is going to be to build an outpost. And to do that, we're going to have to learn how to use this software. And we're also going to have to learn how to place different actors into the world. And that's going to be our main objective for this course. By the end of it, we should hopefully have something that looks as lovely as this. But the good news is the assets that we're using, the 3D models, they're modular, which means that you can actually build it whichever way you want. You can be creative with this, and we encourage you to do so. But without further ado, we should get started and learn a little bit about this software that we're looking at. So I'm just going to start off by doing a quick overview of the window that you can see, just so we're not overwhelmed with a bunch of windows and lists that we don't properly understand to begin with. So to start with, let's start with this center window that we can see here. This is what we call the viewport, and it's essentially our window into the 3D world. And if I hold down right click and drag, I can actually look around it, and you can see that we've got some landscape and we've got this outpost in front of us, this example outpost. So this is used generally to move around your world and to place actors in different locations and to customize the actors that exist in your world. Now, if we move up to the place actors section now at the top left, this is a way for you to add actors into the world, kind of base actors that are part of the base Unreal Engine rather than project specific actors. So an example of this would be our player start actor over here. So this is an Unreal actor that has been made as part of the engine, and what it does is it acts as a spawn point for the player. So if I dragged one of these into the world, this is going to be used when the game starts in order for it to know where to spawn the player. So that's just an example of the kind of things that you can find in this place actors section. Let me go ahead and delete that. I'm just going to press the delete key and delete what I added in there. Okay, and then let's move over to this world outliner next. So the world outliner is effectively a list of everything that exists in this level that we're looking at. So the viewport allows us to look around it. And we can move around, and I'll talk about that in a little bit later, but it allows us to see everything in three-dimensional space that exists in our level. However, the world outliner is just a list of everything that exists in our level. And you can see there's quite a lot of different things in here. And we'll see this word actor quite often. So actors tend to be everything that we place into the world. Typically, they're going to be an actor. And you can think of an actor as something we put into the world that has a script or a role to fulfill. It can be a simple role. For example, these are static mesh actors, and all they need to do is to show a 3D model and stay still. They don't do anything other than displaying this 3D model. But you can get some more dynamic ones. We've got one over here, for example, which is a door actor. And what that does is when we get close to it, the door will open so you can walk into it. So actors can be simple or complex, but what we have in this world outliner is a list of all the actors that make up our level that we're in. Now, once we click on one of these actors in the world outliner, the detail section underneath will show you information specific to that particular actor. So because we're currently clicked on a door here, we've got some information about the transform. Transform is just a way to describe where in 3D space should this exist. So you've got information about its location on an X, Y, and Z axis, rotation, scale. You can make things bigger or smaller if you wish. You can choose to hide an actor. There's a bunch of different things in here, but it's going to be specific to the actor that you've selected. We'll learn more about that a little bit later. Now, the final section of the screen we want to talk about then is this content browser down at the bottom left of the screen. Now, you may not have this little view here where we've got almost a tree view of folders. If you haven't, there's a little button here that you click, and that'll toggle it on and off. And this might be a little bit more similar to navigating folders like you would do on your operating system. So what we've got here is an organization of all the assets that we're going to use in our project. And we can add assets to this as we go along. But yeah, this is how we can locate them and find them and organize them and then use them in our game. So an example of this is these meshes that make up this building. They will live in a folder where we have a building set folder, and in here we have a basic blocks folder. And if I click on this, we've got a bunch of assets. So I keep using that word assets. Assets can mean a variety of things. in this instance, it means a static mesh or a 3D model. You can think of a static mesh as a non-animated 3D model, if you will. So we've got some static meshes here. We can just drag those into the world if I want to use one. So here's a piece of wall. I will drag it, and there we go. I've got a wall in my level now. So the content browser allows you to find assets that are project specific, and then you can add them into your world as you need. So static meshes is one type, as I said, but it can be many other things. It can be audio files, it can be AI behavior trees, or it can be things known as custom blueprints, which is where you get to define an actor's custom behavior using a visual scripting language. So there's plenty of different varieties of assets that we're not going to get into talking about each of them today, but that is what the content browser is. It's your way to see all of those assets, find them, and then add them into your level when you need them. All right, so that's a general overview of our Unreal Engine editor, and it's about time that we got started now on learning how to move around this level that we've got in front of us. My first step is I'm going to just remove this wall that I added in as an example, so I'm just going to click on it and press the delete key. Awesome. Okay, so let's learn how we move around. So I mentioned already, if we hold the right click, you can look around the world. Now, if you try holding the left click and moving the mouse, what you'll see is you start moving. So moving the mouse up and down will move you backwards and forwards. Left and right will still turn you. And if you were to hold Alt, you can rotate around with the left click. And if you use both clicks at the same time, left and right, you can move up and down if you move the mouse forward and backwards. So this is one way to move around. Personally, I find it a bit difficult to move around using those tools. What I prefer to do is the alternative control scheme. And this might be familiar to you if you've ever played a first-person perspective game on PC. We use the WASD keys in order to move around forward, backwards, left and right. So let's try that. While holding down the right click to look around, now you can use W and S to move backwards and forward, A and D to move left and right. And this way you can combine them, you can press them all at the same time. And whilst moving the mouse as well, I'm just going to try and circle this. So I'm holding A to move to the left, like I'm strafing to the left, and then I'm just moving my mouse to focus on the middle of the screen. So it may take a little getting used to if you've not played a PC game using these controls before, but if you have, it's probably going to be quite familiar to you. Now, another thing to be aware of is my screen might be moving a little bit quicker than yours. And the reason is you can control the speed of the camera as you move around. So let's practice doing this. I'm going to hold right click. I'm going to move back and forward using W and S. Now, whilst doing this, while holding right click, I can scroll the mouse wheel. So if I scroll it down, you'll notice I go a lot slower. And if I scroll it up, I go really fast. So this is a way you can, whilst moving, you can scroll the mouse up and down in order to dynamically change what speed you're moving. And if you find that a bit challenging to do, you can use this drop down up here to alter the camera speed as well. So if you find it hard to do the mouse wheels while holding the right click and moving around, then just use this instead. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of information about how we move around. I think what we should try and do is move over this hill, because there's a foundation laid out where we're going to build our very own outpost later in this. So let's move over to there. So if you hold the right click and then you face over to this left direction, we're going to use W. And if you want to move up, you just tilt the camera up. So you move forward the way the camera is facing. So just navigate, and if you want to practice at this, you can try and just hug this floor. Try and stay close to this floor to make sure you get a hang of how to move around. I'm going to go scroll the mouse to go a little bit faster, and then we're going to stop right around here. Okay, and this is our foundation for where we're going to build our outpost. Now, before we get started on that, there's still a few things I want to quickly go through, but we're getting close to the point where we're going to start adding in actors and learning how to move them, manipulate them in the world. So let's get started. Now, earlier I talked about this place actors section, and this is where you can add some base Unreal classes into your world, as I said. So we've got a basic cube over here. So just as a bit of practice, we're going to add one of these into the world. So click and drag and just put it on the floor, and you'll see that it spawns in a cube view. Okay, great. So we're going to just learn a little bit about moving this around, and we're going to use what we call the gizmo. So this is a 3D gizmo which gives you an indication of the different axes in the world. So if I click and hold on the blue arrow, it's going to move it up and down, and then it's going to move it along this red axis if I drag along there. And if you want, you can drag these middle sections here. So you can see I'm between the green and the red. What that means is it'll only move on the green and the red axis, and I can't move it up and down. So yeah, there's a few ways that you can move these actors around, but I just want people to get comfortable moving these things around. And what we've got up here in the viewport is we have snapping settings. And what that means is when we move it, it's going to snap to, you can see there's a bit of a grid on the floor. It's going to be snapping to the grid if we have this enabled. Now your value here may be different when we start. So let's just set this to 100, and you're welcome to set yours to 100, just so we're on the same page. Now what that means is when we move this around, it's now going to be moving by 100 every time that we move it. You can see I don't get these middle kind of points when I'm moving it. It doesn't move elegantly across. It just snaps across 100 units every time. So that will be very useful for us later, because we're going to be using a modular asset kit to build our outpost. And so we can just put pieces right next to each other and make sure we only move pieces at certain distances so that they all fit nicely together. However, sometimes you do want finer control over it. So if I clicked on this grid button, that means I'm no longer snapping and I can move it literally wherever I want there. What you may be noticing on the screen over here, if I just drag this across for you, when I move this, you can see the values over here are changing. So I'm moving it and you can see the Y value is changing. So if you remember earlier, I said if you select an item in the world outliner, you can see the details of it down here. And we can see the location updating as we move it around. Now that also means then that we can actually type manual values into here if we want to change where it is. So if I want this to be 50 units up on the Z axis, I can just type in 50 and there we go, it's moved upwards. So it works both ways. It both shows your changes that you do in the editor, in the 3D view, in the viewport, and also you can just manually change it in the detail panels and the viewport will update accordingly. Okay, so we're going to now, instead of just playing with a cube, let's go ahead and add in a real asset that we want to use. So I'm going to turn my snapping back on. I'm going to delete this cube. So all you need to do is to click on the cube. You'll see the gizmo appear once you've selected it. You press the delete key, not the backspace, the delete key on your keyboard. You'll get rid of it. And now we're in a position to add a new 3D model in. So where are these? Now, I showed you earlier when I was talking about a few things, but let's make sure that we all get there together now. So within your folder structure, what you're looking for is a folder called Outpost Building Set. Now, if you click on that, you can double click it, or you can just click on the little triangle next to it to open it up. You should see you've got some subfolders in here. We've got armor, basic blocks, decorations, and functional. If we go into the basic blocks section, and then click on that, you'll see within this right section, we'll see everything that's in that folder then. Okay, so let's start by adding in a wall. So you can see that how these assets are named. They all start with the same prefix. And this will vary from project to project, how your team decide to name their assets. And the reason they'll use some of these prefixes and give specific naming conventions is to make it easier to find things. For example, I can type in the word wall, and I can just search for anything that has wall in the name. I can also search for anything with old_col, which is what all of them start with. So it makes it easier for me to find assets if I don't know exactly what folder they live in. But we want to use this old_col prim wall 01 asset here. So make sure your snapping is on. We'll have it on 100, and we're just going to drag this in. And what we'll see is when we drag it in, it won't, if I put it in the middle of this grid spot, it's going to snap to the closest grid spot available to it because that snapping is on. But okay, so we've got this 3D model, or static mesh as we call it, in now. And what we need to do is learn a little bit more about how we can position it exactly how we want to. So first off, we've talked about moving things up with the cube, so let's do that. Let's move this up. Let's try and place it roughly over here so it's not in the floor, shall we? So we'll just lift it up, and then we'll use the red side of the gizmo to pull this across. Okay, Good. So we've got it in this location now. We can see it's a little bit off the floor, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Don't worry about that for now. So we've talked about moving. Let's look at rotations. So rotation, we can see we've been looking at movement up here. Rotation, the parameters about rotating are up here. So again, we have snapping options for rotations. And also we have a how much you want it to snap by each time you rotate it. We'll have a look at this in a moment, but to switch into rotation mode, you'll see this was our translate, our movement mode. We now have our rotation here. So let's click on that, and you can see that this gizmo has changed. So it's no longer got the arrows, it's now got these kind of quarter circles that we can use to rotate around different axes. So give it a go. You can click on this blue axis here, and just move your mouse left and right, and you can see that it's going to rotate. Now it might rotate different amounts based on what your snap settings are up here, or whether you've got snapping enabled at all. But if I just set this to 45, for example, what you'll see is it'll only turn 45 degrees at a time. This can be really useful if you want to have consistent angles in your level, or if you want to just turn something quick. You can have this as a higher value. If you want to be more precise, you might want to take it down a lower value, and that lets you rotate it around and be a bit more precise with which angle it's facing. You'll notice as we turn it as well that you get a number, and that will tell you how much it's been rotated so far. So that can be useful as well. Okay, so that's how we rotate. And then the final thing that we're going to have a little look at is scale. So we had our movement, we had our rotation, and then scale gives us a gizmo that looks like this. Instead of arrows on the end, we've got the squares on the end. And what this allows us to do is to kind of stretch out an actor. So if I was to drag on the blue, you see I'm just making it really tall now. Now you're immediately noticing a problem with this. Scaling actors isn't something you should do without caution, because this has stretched the texture on this static mesh and it now looks a little bit wrong. So scaling will just change it in a certain axis, but what we can do is we can scale it on all axes at the same time if we want, and then everything should look a little bit better at least. So let's go back and undo what we've done so we can have a look how to do that. So you'll notice over here in the scale section of the transform of this piece of wall, the default scale value is 1. That's what the X is, that's what the Y is. Because we dragged the blue handle up, this has gone to 5. So if we want this to go back to the default value, we can just set this to be 1 as well. And that should go back to looking how it did earlier. Now, let's go back and learn a few other ways to undo. So let me stretch this out again. So again, we can see this has changed to 5. Another way you can reset it then is to use this yellow arrow, reset to defaults. This is really handy if you ever make some changes and you think, oh no, I don't know, I can't remember what I've changed, but I want it to go back to the default. Then you can click this arrow and it'll take it back to the default settings of when you drag this into the world. So that's really handy too. And then the final thing, I'll just drag it out on the green this time. The final thing, if I want to undo it without using either of those methods, you can use Ctrl-Z like you can in many other pieces of software to undo, and that'll just bring you back as well. So if you make mistakes, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just remember that you can go back a step. You can reset things back to default, or you can just, if you're really in a panic, you can delete it and you can add a new one back in and you'll have it back in its original state. But we've now had a quick look at how we can manipulate these actors in the world. We haven't started building our outpost, but we've got the basic tool set down. We now understand this window to a basic extent, and we understand how we can move, how we can rotate, and how we can scale things in our world. Now, one final note on the scaling. Within this course, it's unlikely you're going to need to do much scaling at all. All these assets have been created the right size for you to piece together nicely. And if you start scaling things, you'll end up making the textures not work together. Some will look like they're stretched compared to others. So we do recommend caution when using the scaling tool. Alrighty, so let's get started on building our own outpost. So the first thing we're going to do before we get started then is to remove this piece of wall that we added in while we were just learning about moving, rotating and scaling. So I'm going to make sure that I've clicked on my translate and select, and then I'm going to click on the object and press the delete key, and that'll get rid of it for us. Now, before we get started building our own outpost, what I'm going to recommend doing is the following. So we're currently in a level called Brief 01. We can see our levels if I go into the levels folder. Remember, if you don't have this side kind of menu of folders here, you can click on this little button here in order to see it. So I can go into my levels. I can go into Brief 01, and you can see this is where that level lives. Now, what we want to do is to make a copy of this level. What that means is if we ever want to start again, or you want to do this brief a couple of times, that we'll have this nice clean slate that you can start from again. So the way we'll do this is we're going to make a copy of this level and then work in that copy of the level. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to right click, and there's an option up here, duplicate. You can use Control W if you prefer as well. So I'm going to press that, and then it asks us to give it a name. So in here, you can just select it. I'm going to call it Brief 01, and then I'm going to go ahead and put my name afterwards, and I recommend you do the same. So once you finish, press Enter. And there we go. We now have a copy of our level, but we're still currently in Brief 01. We haven't moved to that level yet. So a bit of a warning, it's going to pop up and say, do you want to save when we try and move? And the reason is, can you see this little star icon on the map? That means you've changed things in the world since you loaded this level. And it lets you know that you haven't saved those changes. Now for us, we've just been adding in little cubes and bits of wall to learn how it works. So we don't really want to change save any changes to this. So when it pops up, we're going to say no to saving any changes. So let's go ahead. We'll find our new level, which should be brief_01_ whatever your name is. And then we're just going to double click to move to that level. Here's that pop-up I told you about. It's going to say, do you want to save? Let's just say don't save. And then we should now be in a level that looks very similar. The camera may have moved. If you look around using the right click to drag, you'll see that this is very much the same level. Great. Now the good news is we can do whatever we want now. But if we ever want to start again, we can just make a new copy of this Brief 01. We can duplicate it and start again if you ever need to do that. Excellent. Okay. So now that we're in our own safe environment to experiment and be creative with, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to move over to this section. Remember, you can hold right click and WASD in order to move around. But one thing you can also do is you can use this F key to focus on a particular actor you've clicked on. So if I just click on one of these foundation blocks in the distance and then I press F, there we go, it flies to it and it focuses on it. Now I'm a little bit in the floor at the moment, so I'm just going to fly upwards and look back down. But that is a quick way to move around if you ever need to do so. So that was just clicking on an actor and then press F and it'll focus on that particular actor. Another thing you can do is if you want to pivot around, you can hold the Alt key and then you can use left click to kind of move around, and it just circles around a particular point in space. So that's another way that you can kind of look around if you want to go ahead and do so. But now that we're at our Outpost Foundation, this is where we get started. So a reminder, this is a creative task. This is about creating an outpost that you want to make. And it's not just a simple task of adding in a bunch of actors into the world and hoping it looks good, because building a level and building a world is quite a thoughtful process in game development. You need to ask questions. What sort of outpost is this? Is this an active outpost where people still go and visit and inhabit? Or is it an abandoned outpost that everyone had to leave in a hurry because there was some attack perhaps? And these questions are going to feed into how is the decoration inside of the outpost going to look? Is there going to be chairs tumbled over on the floor if everyone had to leave in a hurry? You can also ask questions about what the purpose of this is. Is this going to be a place where people can just, resupply their weapons perhaps, or just get some sleep? Or does it have electronic equipment in there in order to communicate with other outposts around your world? And it's really up to you. Now what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do in this video, is just do quite a basic outpost so that I can teach you the steps required as you go through and help you understand the steps that are required to build an outpost like we want to. But please do remember, this is a creative task and you can differentiate from what I'm doing. You're welcome to make your foundation larger. We've got a 3x3 grid here. If you want to go ahead and make it a bigger foundation to build your outpost on, then you can do that. Now, I'm going to stick to a 3x3 pretty much, but I'm going to talk you through the building blocks as we go through and iterate over this outpost until it looks great. So if I fly us all the way over here, so I'm just using right click you can see that we've got kind of 3 steps that we're going to go through. The first step here is we're going to use basic building blocks, and we can consider what we want this outpost to be, like I was talking about a moment ago. So here all we've got is these exterior walls. You've got this kind of shiny foil material, which is like an insulative layer, but we haven't really decorated it. If we go inside, we can see it's empty. There's no interior lighting in here either, but it's kind of the bare bones of what we want. So that's the first step we're going to be working on. And then what we're going to move on to later is we're going to start looking at adding some exterior panels. So these are like armor panels to give the outpost a bit more structure and strength against the elements of the planet. And then as we go inside of this, we can still see that we're lacking lights and decoration inside, but we have added some variance. And what I mean by that is each one of these foundation panels isn't the same exact block. It's got different meshes, and that can make it look a bit more realistic for you. And then finally, if we go over to step 3 is where we add lights and decorations and finishing touches. And this is where you'll see we've got a bunch of these things on the roof now. And if I go inside, we've got a door on the outside. We go inside, we've got lights, we've got these props, we've got chairs, tables, and we can go upstairs and we can see we've also got a bunch of things in here that really make it feel like it's lived in. So we're going to be building up through those steps, and the very first one is to build the kind of core, the base layer of our building, if you will. So let's start off by adding some walls for this lower floor of our outpost. Now, we're going to need to go and find the place where these building blocks exist, and we've seen it already, but just in case you've forgotten where it is, we can find it in this folder structure. We want to look for the Outpost Building Set folder, then go into the Basic Blocks folder, and you should see a list of assets here. We're going to start with these for this first phase. Now, as we're using a modular set, we're going to need to add what we call a custom grid snapping size. So what I mean by that is each one of these assets, I can double click on them if I want to look at what they look like. Each one of these assets is 320 units wide. So what that means is if we want to stack one next to another so that they're exactly nice and flush together and there's no cracks between them, we want to make sure that we're adding things 320 units apart. And this is where that snapping setting can be really useful. The problem is we don't have a snapping setting for 320 in here. But the great thing is with the Unreal Engine editor, you can customize a lot of these things, including this. So we're going to go ahead and change this list so that we can have a value for 320 in there. We'll also add in 160 as well, half of that 320 value. So to do that, you want to go to Edit. We're then going to go down to Editor Preferences. And this may open in a floating window like this. If you want, you can just drag the tab up to the top bar so that it's all part of the same window for you if you prefer. And what we need to do is search for something called Grid Snapping. And we should see a bunch of options in here, but really what we're looking for is this first list of numbers here. You'll notice 1, 5, 10, 50, 100. This corresponds to the values that we've got in here. So we just need to add some values into this list. So I'm going to go ahead and use this plus button here, and I can add in some values. So the first one I'm going to add is 160, which is half of that 320 value. Then I'm going to add one more, which is 320. And once it's done, we can go and check, click on this drop down, and there we go. We've got some new snapping settings to use. Excellent. So I'm going to switch to 320 to begin with, and let's close down some of these windows once we're finished using them. So I'm happy with those values. I can just press the X to close it. And we were just looking at this mesh earlier. We don't need to change anything in here, so we're just going to close that off as well. Okay, so let's drag them into the world like we did earlier, shall we? And now because we've got this grid setting of 320, you can see if I move the camera down, you can see that our foundation fits exactly within this grid. So it's almost a little bit like Minecraft in a way, where each block is a certain size, and it means that they can be placed next to each other nicely without overlapping at all or having these small narrow gaps that we don't intend. So this is going to be really handy for us placing our assets. So if I was to click and drag this wall asset, you can see that it snaps in and it snaps to one of the cross sections of this grid. Now, a slight problem here is when I move this, you can see it's only going to move by 320 units each time. And this is why I added that extra snap setting of 160. Because sometimes, based on where the pivot point of your asset is, you might want to just move it half a block. So if I move it half up and half to the side, we can now see that this nicely fits to that foundation piece without any overlap, which is great. So we've added in our first piece of wall. So what have we got? On the outside, we've got, as I mentioned earlier, this insulative layer. And then on the inside, we've got a more interior wall look. So keep that in mind when you're placing these interior walls within this basic blocks folder, that these are going to have that kind of shimmery, foily look on the outside. Okay, so if I want to add more, I can just click and drag more. I drag another in, I move it up. But some of you may be thinking, is there a quicker way to do this? And you're right, there are quicker ways to do this. Two things I'm going to show you. First thing you can do is you can duplicate this. So do you remember when we copied our map earlier, we used something called duplication, which was hold Control and press W and it makes a copy of it. So let's go and do that. I'm going to press Control and W. And what you can see is happening is it's made another one of it. The slight unfortunate thing is it's just moved it forward and to the side by the grid snapping size. So it's 160 on the red axis and 160 on the green axis here as well. So then we need to reposition it, move into space. It's not too bad. That works quite nicely. But something that I prefer doing is to use something which is just holding down the Alt key when you're dragging off one of these arrows. So I'm going to hold down Alt and then I'm going to click on this red arrow, and you'll notice that the old one stays in place, but I've now got, see, this is the old one, but I've now got this new one. So the nice thing about this is it doesn't automatically move it anywhere for you. So if I want to place these walls along this back wall nicely, first off, before I copy these, let's rotate them nicely. One thing to point out, you can see that this wall has been set up incorrectly because it's floating on nothing. That'll help you remember that you want the foil shiny side on the outside. So let's rotate this. I'm going to switch to my rotation mode. You may notice as well, you can use E, W, E, or R to switch between these modes if you prefer using those. So let's just click on this. I'm going to rotate this around so it's facing the right way. So I move it 180. Brilliant, that fits nicely now. So now we're going to use that Alt tool in order to move things across. So I'm going to switch back to my select and translate. I can press W to do that. And then I'm going to hold Alt and I can just drag it across really quickly. I let go of Alt and click. I press Alt again, I drag, and I've got another piece. And that for me ends up being a lot quicker for adding lots of similar pieces into the level. Okay, so at the moment we've got walls on either side. We now need to just add a couple more walls to kind of box this off for us. So I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to drag it with Alt. And then I'm going to rotate it. So I'm going to press the E key to switch to this mode. And then I'm going to drag it around until it's at 90. It might be an idea for me at this point to maybe switch this snapping size for rotation to 45. So when we rotate it, we don't have to be so precise with our angle. Okay, I'm then going to press W to move back to this mode and just get it into position. And you can probably imagine what these next steps are. So I'll hold Alt, I'll drag, let go, hold Alt, drag, let go. Now, another thing you may want to do is, well, if we can just copy one piece, can't we copy multiple pieces? And you're absolutely correct, you can do that. So let's look how we do that. To select multiple things at once, you'll see you can click on things, but it deselects the previous thing, right? So just like you may have done in other pieces of software, you can hold the Control key to select multiple things at once. And the nice thing about this is if I accidentally selected another, I've selected this floor piece, whilst holding Control, I can click on it again and it deselects it. So you can see it in the world outliner. We've selected 3 pieces of wall. You can see they're highlighted with this yellow border as well. So now if I want to make a copy of all of those, we use the exact same tools that we've been using. I hold down Alt, I drag the direction I want to copy them in, and there we go. I've got 3 walls copied across, easy as that. Now the one thing here though is they're facing the wrong way. So let's go ahead and rotate those. So if I press the E key or click up here to rotate, you'll see now it's going to rotate around slightly, not exactly where we want it. And that's just because it's pivoting around this particular piece of wall, but it's no problem. We can just switch back to our select and we can move it into place. Excellent. Okay, so we've got ourselves a nice bit of our ground floor. It's very simple. It's just a 3x3 grid, but hopefully we've had a little look at how we can just get started building the foundation. But now we need to think about how is this going to be used. Now, first thing is I can't get into this outpost. So that would be a first thing to consider, is where are we going to enter it? Where do we want our doorway? Now, I'm going to keep it simple. We're just going to get a doorway right in the front, I believe. But I tell you what we might do is just add a bit of an extension out for where the door is when you come in. So I'm going to delete this piece of wall. So I've just selected it. I'm going to press delete in order to make a gap. And I'm going to extend my foundation out a little bit. I'm going to do the same as I've done with the walls. I'm just going to copy it. I'll hold down Alt, I'll drag it, and then I'll release it. Now I'll probably want some walls on these outside pieces, and then I'll just have a door on the front here. So if I want, I can just copy one of these. I'm going to hold Alt, drag this across, and place it in the right position. And then I'll do the same thing here. I'll just hold Alt to drag this across, use E to go to rotate mode, rotate it around, and there we go. We've got almost like a corridor going in now. That looks better to me. Okay, and then finally we want to add a door. And at the moment, all we've been adding is these wall pieces. So we need to find the door piece. And you can see, okay, within this folder, there's a couple of door pieces. We've got one called the interior wall. So that would be within your building if you need a doorway. And then we've got a door wall. So this is going to act like an exterior wall, but it's going to have a door in it. So that's the one we're going to look to use. So let's go ahead and drag that in. And like before, I'm going to switch to my select and translate. I'm going to move it up to position. And there we go. Because we're using this nice modular set, it just snaps lovely into position. So we've kind of started off the foundation of our base. And it's about time we had a look at what it would feel like as a player. Now we can fly around like we've been doing. However, the Unreal Engine editor also has a play mode where you can kind of simulate the game in the editor, and that's what we're going to learn a little bit about now. So you may have noticed there's this play button up the top right. That is how we do exactly what I just said. So what happens when you press play is that you have two options here. It'll either spawn you where the current camera is, or it'll spawn you where the default player start is. And we have one of these player start actors right by here. And what that means is it'll spawn me in the world at this location. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and press play. And you can see that it moved me straight to where that player start was. Now, I've got the cursor on the screen still. So if I want to control this, I need to click on the screen once. And you'll see now that once I've done that, I can move around. I can use WSAD to move, but this time I'm not flying. I can jump using space. So it's more like you're playing a first-person perspective game now. So let's go and experience how this would feel to make sure that it feels the right size for what we're intending for this outpost. So as I walk in, the first thing I'm going to notice is, well, actually, I can't walk straight in. This is a bit high for me. So maybe we need to add some stairs in. Okay, that's a first step. I can jump. I can find my way in this way. That's no problem. And then, okay, we've got some space in here. And it may be once you see the outpost that you can start building on your idea about where should things be. Now, it's not a massive amount of space, so I'm thinking we're probably going to use one of these corners maybe for some stairs to go up to a second floor, and then that gives us some room in here. And, well, maybe this will be a place when people check into the outpost, they might drop off their weapons to the side, perhaps. There might be a little social area where people can wait if there's, let's say, a squad of 4 people arrive. You know, instead of having a big queue, there might be a little waiting area here, a place to check in your weapons so it's nice and safe. And then maybe we go up some stairs, and then upstairs is where there's some more functional things for us to do. So that's maybe going to be the kind of idea that I go for with this. So now that we've had a little play around, we're still in this play and editor session at the moment. How do we stop it? So you may notice at the top of the screen where the play button was, it now says stop. Okay, that's great, but I can't, my cursor isn't on the screen anymore. So there's 2 ways to do this. If you want to just quickly stop, you can press escape and that'll do it for you. Otherwise, you can hold Shift and F1 and that'll give your cursor back to you. And you can either click back on the game to move around again, or if I do Shift and F1 again, you can manually go and press on this stop button and that'll stop you from that session. And now we're back in our flying around mode. You'll notice we don't have the kind of heads up display that we had when we were playing the game. So the second thing I just want to, while we're talking about this, I want to show is, you may remember I mentioned this current camera location option here. So what that does, instead of spawning us on this actor here, it's gonna just spawn us wherever we are while we're flying around this level. So if I go to this corner and face in like this, and then I press play, now that I've got this option on, you can see that I just get spawned exactly in that position. So that could be useful when you want to test without having to run all the way from the start location. Okay, so let's think of how to action that feedback then. I pressed escape to exit, and first thing we notice is we wanted some stairs so that we can actually walk in. Let's do that. So looking through here, we have a few things which are stairs. If you want help finding stuff sometimes, you can use this search. I can just type in stair, and that'll show me all the different types of stairs that we've got here, right? So that can be useful. The one we're looking for is going to be, I think, probably this one here, Old Coal Prim Stairs 01. So let's go ahead and drag this in. So I've placed it roughly where I want it. Obviously, I don't want it facing that way. So let's go ahead and change this. So I've pressed E to switch to this mode. I'm going to rotate it around. I'm then going to use W to move it. I'm going to move it a little closer, and I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And that puts it, that looks perfect in terms of position there. So should we give that a go? Let's press play, test it out, and now let's try and walk towards it. Brill, I can walk into my building. It's a great start to an outpost, huh? So yeah, that's why it's important to test the level as you go on, because sometimes you need to kind of experience it from the perspective of the player to make sure that it feels right and that you haven't, there's no overlooking or kind of issues that you've overlooked. All right, so I'm going to press escape to jump out of this, and then what we'll do is we'll start building the interior of our level, the stairs going up and maybe a ceiling above us in the second floor in a moment. But I want to talk a little bit about keeping things organized. Now, earlier, you may remember we talked about this world outliner. So I'm just going to drag this down to show it a bit larger on a screen. And what we can see is all of the pieces that we've added so far, they're in this list here, all these wall pieces, and you can see we've got the stairs and we've got the door wall as well. Now, what we've set up for you in this level is we have folders. So you can see we've got these little folder icons, and these are used to organize. Can you see how many assets there are in the examples that we've set up earlier? So what we've done is we've put them in folders, and then you can minimize those folders to keep things tidy so that you don't have to look at all of the actors in the world all the time. So let's minimize those down, and then we can see we've made a folder for you called My Outpost already. And what that has in it is the bit of text over here that says My Outpost, and then it also has the foundation blocks that we set in the world earlier. But any new actors that we've dragged in, they will be just in the main overarching level. So they're right at the bottom here in this big list. So what I recommend we do is to put them in the folder so that we can keep a bit of a organized structure as we add more and more actors into the world. So let's select all of these. I'm going to click on one, and then I can hold down Shift and click and to select all of them at once. And what we're going to do then is we could just click and drag them and let go of them on that folder. That's one way to do it, like so. Now the alternative, I'm going to cancel that. The alternative is you can just right click, and there's a move to option right at the bottom here, and then you can choose the folder here. So I'm going to move it to the folder called My Outpost. And now you'll see that it's all now contained in this nice folder. Excellent. Now, if you want, you can make subfolders, and we might do that later to kind of organize things. But the nice thing now is we've got our world outliner not too cluttered. And this isn't just about being tidy, but as your level grows, it'll be easier for you to find things in your level if you've organized it. So now we've got the boring organizational part out the way, let's carry on with our outpost. So I was interested in adding stairs so that we can go up a level in here. And I think because this floor space isn't massive, I think what might be a good idea for us is to look at using corner stairs so that it doesn't require as much room within our space. So let's try these ones, the stairs 02. They might be fine for us. So I'm going to click and drag them in. I'm going to locate them exactly where I want. So I don't think that's going to do us any good. So let's switch to rotation. Let's move them around. And I think that would probably work for us. So you go up the stairs here. Yeah, you hug the wall. That makes sense to me because that way the stairs aren't dominating the room and it gives us lots of room for the other things we talked about earlier. Okay, and then we're going to have a second floor up here, right? Excellent. Now, one thing you may notice is these stairs have gone straight into that not into the folder of our outpost. So if you want, you can keep that tidy as you go along. Okay, now let's create a second floor then, shall we? So the first thing we probably want is some ceiling, and our ceiling acts as a floor, if you will. So I just want to give a little example of this so that we can understand how this works. So let's first off, I'm going to add in, you don't need to copy this bit, but just to demonstrate, I'm going to add in a bit of foundation. I'm going to place it on the floor like we've got over here, right? And then I'm going to build up a bit of wall around it just so we can see how these pieces piece together. So we've used these wall pieces before. We're just going to place this. I can probably just copy this one over here. We'll rotate them so it's facing the right way as well. And then I'll just copy these, rotate, bring this one out, and then we'll do the same over here. Just holding Alt to copy, rotating. Okay, so what we've got right now is you can see how it fits nicely on top of the foundation that we've got. Now let's talk about the ceiling. So the ceiling piece, you can see over here we've got something called ceiling. When I add this in, so right now it looks quite high, and you can see if I move to my select and translate mode, the pivot point for this is way below it. And the reason is you're meant to kind of, it's been designed so that you can put this exactly on the floor that the ceiling's meant to be above. So if I just move this piece of wall out the way, so you can see when I click on this and I move this down, the pivot point is going to be bang in the middle of that floor, and that gives you a lovely little cube that we can work with. And the nice thing about that then is if I place this back in, it's all nicely contained. Look how flat that is. And then if I want to add another floor, well, let's just copy these walls up. And you can see that ceiling acts as our floor on the next layer as well. So it's a nice way that these assets have been designed, and it just means that we can easily piece these things together, and you can see how the different kind of locations of these assets work together. Now later we will be, I'll keep this here for now because we'll be adding on armor pieces on the outside. So I'll keep this example bit of kind of structure here. But let's go back to our actual outpost and carry on then. So based on that logic, we can add in ceilings by just clicking and dragging, and we'll place them where we want them. So you can see the pivot point is there, and that means that's going to be the ceiling above that tile. If I look down, that's exactly above it. So like we've done before, we can just copy and paste these around now. So I'm holding Alt, I can just drag them out to be how I want them to be. Now what I'm thinking about is, well, we definitely don't want to block the stairs like that, because then there's no way that we're going to walk up the stairs, right? So we've got to keep that into consideration. So we'll move this piece across. But I'm thinking it might be fun actually we can make this top floor a little larger. Since we've already got this doorway out, it looks like it'd be able to support maybe a bit of overhang here, right? So let's go ahead and just drag out a couple of pieces of ceiling like this. So this means this top floor is going to be our kind of main area, and we've got a bit more room to work with now. Okay. So that's good with me. We go in here, we'll say, okay, it's a little bit dark. That's my first impression. Why don't we just press play and see how it feels as a player? So we come in, the stairs are I like that the stairs are in that corner. I think it gives us plenty of space to work with still. It's a little bit dark in here. We're getting light because we haven't put any roof up here, but that makes me think, well, we might want to consider adding some windows into here as well. So I'll tell you what, we'll add this second floor and then we'll work out where a window is going to make sense for us in this building. So, okay, I'm going to hit escape, jump out of that mode. And now what we need to do is to add the walls on the second floor. We've learned a bunch of tools already that's going to make this easier, right? We can just select almost all of these walls. So I'm going to hold down Control. I can let go of Control between clicking as well. So I'm not pressing Control now, but when I want to click a new piece, I hold Control, I click. I can let go of Control, again, move the camera, hold Control and click. So I go around all these edges. Okay, so we've got these selected here. What I'm going to do now is if I hold Alt, I can just drag them up, and voila, we have ourselves a nice bit of walls that we only had to drag up quickly to achieve. So that's nice and handy. All right, so let's go ahead and think about how we want these walls to work. So we probably want this just coming across like this. We'll copy another one and rotate it. And then we'll do the same here. And then maybe what we'll have is we can have ourselves maybe a little bit of a balcony, because if there's going to be a roof to this, this might be an outpost where there's satellite equipment in order to communicate with other outposts. So there might be some satellite equipment we'll put on the roof, which means that maybe we need a way to get up there to repair it as well. So what we'll do is we'll leave this little bit of tile here without walls around it, and we can exit out via a door and maybe have a ladder up to the roof. So yeah, let's go with that. So let's just add in a couple more pieces of wall, but leaving this tile available. We'll turn this into a door in a short moment. And then let's copy one more time, rotate, and we'll place this by here. There we go. Okay. So we've got our footprint as we come up now. And yeah, I think this is the bit where we want to probably turn this into a door. Now, something I haven't shown you yet that you can do is, instead of just deleting this and dragging in a door, you can actually replace them. So if I was to right click on this, you can see that we've got some replace options down here. Replace selected actors with, and you can go in and there's a bit of a list to use here, but the best way to do it is find the thing that you want to replace it with in the content browser first. So we want to use this door wall, click that, and then if you just right click, you can go replace with, and you can see that down here it says door wall. It uses the asset that you selected. So if I click on that, there we go. It's just replaced it for us, and we don't need to play around with the positioning of that then. So should we have a go and see how that feels? Let's go up the stairs. Let's press play. We'll walk up our stairs. Excellent. Okay, we can get up. Okay, that's cool actually. I like this because the door, you've got to go forward to see it, and then you've got a nice little way out. And yeah, we could have maybe a ladder up here, which would allow us to get access to the roof. All right, I think that's good. Let's go with that. I'm going to press escape to come out. And now we need to have a little think about how are we going to add our ceiling? Well, hopefully you've got some ideas. We can just copy these ceiling pieces and we can just drag them up. So I'm going to hold Alt. And then I'm going to just drag Alt these across. And there we go. We've got our roof as quick as that. Now, we probably don't want this particular piece here if this is going to be where we're climbing onto our roof. So I can just press delete on that. But other than that, we've got our kind of foundation structure here, haven't we? Now, if you are kind of thinking, well, have I done everything here? Is there anything else I need to consider? It could be useful for you to fly over to have a look at that first example that we set. So if you remember, on the right side of the map, or if you want, you can just go ahead and find the step 1 outpost example. If you just select anything in here and press that F key to go and focus on it, it'll just fly us straight over. So this was an example, and this is the sort of setup that we've got here. So yeah, it could be good for us to add in some of these support pillars perhaps to hold up the overhang that we've got. That would be a good idea. You can see that they've got windows in here as well. That would be something that we need to consider. And we also see that in order to kind of get around the exterior of the base, they've extended the foundation out and around, and that could be a good idea. So you're not dependent on the planet's terrain, which could be up and down and not too stable. So yeah, I think that's a good, giving us a few hints there about what we need to consider. All right, so we're going to go back over to ours. So you can fly over if you prefer, but I'm just going to go ahead and click in My Outpost, select the My Outpost text, press F, and that'll fly me right over to this section where we were building our outpost. Okay, so let's think, how do we want these windows to go in? So the windows, the way I'm thinking about this is this might be a kind of almost like an observation wall where we can have maybe a block of windows here where people look out of. Because if you think you're coming up the stairs here, I think it might be nice that you come up the stairs and you see this nice view across the terrain. So I'm thinking of maybe swapping out some windows in these blocks. We probably want at least one maybe, so we can look out in this direction. If this is an outpost, we want to know our surroundings, right? Especially if there were some maybe hostile alien creatures or something on this planet. You might want to make sure that we've got eyes around our perimeters so that we don't get surprised. Yeah, so I'm imagining that we'll do that. We'll get some windows on this wall here. We'll maybe get one out there, and then down here, maybe we'll get two going out the front, because we want to see people. If let's say that I'm working in this outpost and I do the checks as people arrive and they check in their guns or their equipment for us to resupply. I want to know when someone's coming, so maybe having a window looking out here might be a good idea. So yeah, I'll probably throw some windows in here And we might throw another one on this left side, because I don't think we've got any vision out to, sorry, the right side, I guess, if you're looking out of the door. Yeah, we haven't got any vision outside this area at the moment. So yeah, okay, let's go ahead and start doing that then. So first step, you can manually drag in the window. So let's find the window. We've got our old cold prim window wall here. I could just drag that in and position it like we've done before. But realistically, like I've discussed, you can just swap these meshes. So I'm going to click on this. I've already selected my window wall, so I'm just going to right click and I'm going to say replace it with the window wall. And there we go. We've now got a window looking out. Excellent. That was quick, wasn't it? So let's go ahead and do the same. I'm going to replace that. Okay, we've got a view out there now as well. Okay, and we can see that, yeah, the foil is on the outside. It's put it in the right way for us. All right, and we talked about maybe having a load of walls along here. So I'm going to select them all. Yeah, that's where I want to replace with. Can we replace them all at once? Let's right click, replace it with this. We can. Look at that. We've now got our wall of windows. So as we come up the stairs, maybe I should give this a go, see how it feels. I'm going to just press play. We can come up the stairs and there we go. We got this lovely view across here. I like that. And that'll allow light to come into the room as well to make it a little less dark. But we will be adding some light in at a later point as well. Don't worry about that. We talked about maybe having a bit of a view out here as well. I think I might have maybe a bit of a resting station here. So maybe like a place where people could shower and maybe a bed to sleep or something like that. So we won't have windows in that section, but maybe, yeah, we'll have a window out the front. So let's go ahead and do that. So press escape. We're going to replace this with the window wall. Okay, that's good. And then downstairs, I feel it might be good for us to at least have a bit of a view out here. So yeah, let's change this one to be a window wall as well. So we got a bit of a view. It also means when you're coming down the stairs, it doesn't look quite as kind of close, because with a wall right up against you, you've got a bit of a kind of view out the side, which might feel good for the player. And then, yeah, whether or not we want another window over here as well, we may do. Maybe we'll see how it feels. We can always change this as we go. Alrighty, so we've got the windows in. That's a good start point. And I think from the outside, it's worth considering, does it look feasible from the outside as well? I think right now the spacing between them is nice, that we've got windows there, here. And I like that line of windows across there. That looks quite good. We've got nothing on the back wall, although that is maybe the closest to the hills. So it's something for us to consider, but we'll think about that later. That's no problem. Okay, so that was one thing that we wanted to add. The second thing from that example that we looked at earlier was we want to add a bit more foundation around our base. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've just selected a foundation block here. I'm going to hold Alt. We're going to just drag these around the base. You don't have to do this. This is just something, if you think that it'd be a case that people would be walking around the perimeter, maybe there'd be some equipment around the edges, or maybe you'd have some storage boxes for supplies. So let's go ahead and just drag these out. And I'm doing one at a time. You can also, as we've done before, control and select multiple and copy them across. But I just wanted to do it one by one this time to think about it as I do it. Okay, now one issue we may have is, remember we needed the stairs to get up before. So it might be worth, if we are planning to have things around here, to add more stairs. But until we've designed it a bit more, I'll leave it as it is. The player can always jump and hop up to get to this exterior if they want to. Okay, so I think we're looking good for part one of kind of building the core of our building. And the next step really is going to be adding in a bit more thought about, first off, we want to protect the outside of our base. So we're going to add some armor pieces to the outside. And then second, we want to make sure that we're happy with our design. Start thinking again about how this is going to be used and what purpose our outpost is going to have, and start building maybe where different sections within the building are going to exist. So before we get started on this second phase of adding to our outpost, it's worth us making sure that we now tidy up all of the assets that we were creating earlier. So if you remember, we have this My Outpost folder, and we learned that when we add actors in from the content browser, they just get added to the world. So we just need to select them all and we'll add them into that folder. So I'm just going to shift and click to select all of them after I selected the first one. And then we can just either drag it into the folder, or you can right click, move to, and then select the folder there. Now, because we're going to start our second phase, if you will, where we're not just using the basic building blocks anymore, it might be worth us actually creating another folder now so we can really keep things organized and structured, as we're going to be adding more and more actors as we go. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to right click on my outpost. I'm going to create a subfolder, and we're going to just call this our basic blocks. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything that's in this folder other than the text that we've got over there. I'm going to select everything other than that. So I'll click on this top one here. I'll scroll down. I'll then hold Shift and click to select them all. Scroll back up now, not holding Shift. And then I'm going to just drag them into this basic blocks folder. And what that means now is we've got this nice subfolder. So as we do our next step, which is going to be our armor on the outside of it, we can place those in another folder. So let's go ahead and create a new folder ready for that. I'm going to right click on my outpost. I'm going to create a subfolder, and let's just call this our armor. And at the moment it's empty, and that's not a problem. So let's go over and remind ourselves exactly what we want to achieve in this second step. And a good way to do that is we can go and visit the examples we set up. So if I just click on any item here, and then I just go and press F so it goes to focus on that, it'll fly us over to that step 2 example. So I'm going to press F. And there we go. We can see that it's flown us over to this example. Now, step 2 is about adding armor pieces and variation and variety. So the armor pieces are these outside pieces. We can no longer see the shiny kind of insulation wall, if you will. And now what we've got is this more strong looking exterior that could, maybe it's for protecting against attacks if this is a hostile planet, or maybe it's just to protect against the environment on an alien planet. So we're going to be adding armor pieces around the exterior of our building, and then also variety. What we'll notice is these foundation blocks, you notice they all differ. So we have a variety per kind of wall or bit of foundation. We have a variety of pieces that you can use so that it doesn't look repetitive, and that'll allow you to kind of add a bit of character. If it's a worn down outpost that has been abandoned, then maybe we want to use more of variations that show a bit of damage or a bit of wear and tear. So that's going to be something that really depends on what your story is for your outpost. So make sure you think about that. So that's what we're looking to achieve. So let's head back over to our outpost. I'm just going to click on my outpost text, which we know is outside of my outpost. I'm going to press F to focus it, and then I'll just fly forward over here. So before we get started then, let's use this example setup that I set on the side here just to show you how these exterior armor pieces work. Now we've been working in our outpost building set and basic blocks folder, and now what we've got is this armor folder above it that we can go into. So let's do that. So I click on that, and you can see we've got quite a few pieces in here. So we've got something for a door, we've got something for corners, we also have a window. And we have a few varieties that look different. It's not so much they're worn down, it's more of they're actually quite different in how they look. So let's have a look at some of these quickly. They'll work in the same way as long as you've got a good snap size on, that you can just drag them in and position them easy enough. So let's get the wall on, drag it in, move it up. And what's nice about these is you'll notice that it fits exactly on the outside of that 320 by 320 cube that we've been working with. So yeah, that's how you know the difference between the interior and exterior walls. They will fit nicely on the outside, whereas when we're placing our interior walls, they should be flush with the kind of cube that we're working with, if you will. So yeah, that's what these look like. We do have this a slightly different wall that we could use. Let's just drag this one into place so that you can see the difference between them. So quite similar, but this just has like a panel on it as well. So that will add some nice variety for us as well. And on top of that, we need to think, well, we've got a doorway, so how is that going to work? And yeah, we've got some armor panels that take into account the doorway as well. So I can rotate this, and you can see that this has room for a door. And we have some for windows as well. So if I was just to click on one of the old ones to replace it, I'll select the window wall, and I'll just right click and say replace. You can see that it's got a hole for the window as well. So there's a few varieties you're welcome to check out yourselves. Some have a bit more of a protective layer as well. Imagine that maybe at a certain time of day that the sun is so strong that you need to make sure you're out of it. So maybe you need some sort of shutters on the window. So it really depends on what kind of story you want to tell with your outpost. But what we're going to look at finally is these corner pieces. And these are a little less obvious, but you can see here that it doesn't look wrong. But what we've got here is a little kind of gap. So if you do want to fill those in, you can use these corner pieces. So if I drag one of these in and we place this, you can see that that just fills in that gap nicely there. So it's filled in and you don't have that kind of angle that we had before when there was a gap there. So that's completely optional. If you want to use those, you're welcome to use those. So now we've seen roughly how these armor pieces work. Let's go ahead and add this to our structure. And it's going to be quite a straightforward process. Because of the way that this modular system works, it means we can just drag it on and copy using that alt and dragging technique that we've seen before. We can just copy things around and it'll be done in no time. So let's get this done pretty quickly. We'll drag on a piece of exterior wall. I'm going to just use just this exterior wall to begin with, and then we'll add the variety pieces in afterwards. So I'm holding Alt, I'm just clicking to drag it across. I'll select all three of these. I'm going to hold Alt and I'll drag that up as well. And then I can hold down Control and select all of these. I'm going to hold Alt and drag on the red to pull this across. We're going to rotate all 6 of these now. You don't have to do it all in one go like I'm doing. If you prefer to go slow and be a bit more careful about it, you're welcome to. I'm just trying to go through this so you get an idea of how you can take these use these tools and shortcuts to speed up the productivity here. Now, if we wanted, we could add in those corner pieces into here as well, right? So let's get this corner piece. We need to rotate it around. So I'm going to press E, rotate it so it's facing the right way. So one more turn here, it should do it for us. There we go. And then we just need to get these exterior pieces on this side as well. So let's copy this corner piece across, rotate it around. There we go. That's nice. We probably, I realize I only put one in, so we probably want to do one on the top side as well. So let's go ahead and do that before I forget. Okay, brill. And then we just need to do some more of these, right? So let's just take these two, copy them across, rotate them around, and put them into position. We need one more here. Do that. Let's copy these 3, drag them up. Okay, so we're starting to see how these exterior walls are all coming together now. So we've got a few to do on the front side, but other than that, we're looking quite good at the moment. So we need some corner pieces. Let's add in some of those. You do have a different variety type of corner piece as well if you want to use that instead. So that's one of them, and this is the other one down here. So you can see one of them has the more kind of protruding sections to it, whereas this one is more inset. So it's really up to you which ones you want to use. We'll just stick to we'll be consistent and use this one for now. So we'll just copy this and move this one up. And then let's get some more of these walls. Now I'm aware I'm covering all of the windows, by the way. We're going to switch these out in just a moment. I just want to get every kind of wall covered so I don't forget. We need the downstairs ones as well. We need this front door section as well, and we need these side sections probably. So let's go ahead and move that out there. And then I'll get this on that wall. We'll do the same over here. There we go. So we need to also do, you see there's a bit of, we can see that insulation layer there. So we're going to also need to cover that wall. And you just fly around and make sure that you've covered every area you wanted. There's a few sections here that I might want to consider, like the corners. So let's drag in a couple of corners in here. Make sure that it looks nice and sealed off. Oh, I accidentally created a copy of that. I just pressed Ctrl Z to undo that. So let's move this across, rotate it around. Yeah, that looks good to me. Okay, that is done. We can fill that corner in as well. And we probably want this corner done as well in there. Okay, so we're looking like we've sealed off our building. We'll just do a fly around. It's easy to make a mistake and forget about some of these pieces. But to me, it's looking pretty sealed off. Okay, good. Now that we've done that, we need to consider how we can no longer get into our building. I don't think this is going to be a great outpost if we're just greeted by a solid wall. So now we need to switch out these pieces and make sure that we've considered what we had set up prior. So this needs to be a door piece. So I'm going to just select the door and Remember, you could have just dragged in a door piece manually. It's totally viable to do that. But I'm just going to go in and click on the door piece that I want to swap it with. And then I'll just replace it like that. And there we go. We can see that we go in now. If I walk through this, you can see there we go. It looks quite nice. We'll add a door that actually opens and closes a little later. But for now, that is working just how we wanted it to. Okay, so we've got a window over here and a window there as well. So we want to replace this one, and this one. So I'm holding control to click multiple at once. And we want to swap them over with these window walls here. So I'm going to right click on the actual asset in the world. And we want to replace it with this window wall. There we go. Look at that. So now, if we're inside, we can see outside again. We haven't blocked out our vision. That's great. And then up top, we've got all of these windows. And, you know, this could be a case where we try out one of the alternative windows. So as this is our main viewing gallery, maybe they need a little bit more of a kind of a sun filter so that the harsh light doesn't get into the building all day long. So should we have a look what this one looks like? Let's right click, add that in. Now replace it. And there we go. We can see that it's got a little bit more of a kind of shutter element to it compared to this one down here. So yeah, that means less light would get in. It does mean you have a less expansive view. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. If you want to just play around and see what they look like, you can just easily right click and try the other one. These are shutters as if they've been closed altogether. So maybe some of your windows would have a shutter on it and some of them won't. It's really up to you how you do this. So I'm going to for the sake of a nice view, I'm going to keep to this first one here so that we get this lovely view across the hills. So I'll stick with that for now. We need a door and a window here as well. So let's replace this one with that window. And then this one was going to be our door as well. So we find the door, we right click and we say replace. There we go. Okay, so at the moment, it looks like we've armored our exterior. Now, one of the issues, I wouldn't say it's an issue, but one of the considerations, I guess, that we've got here is all of these walls look kind of exactly the same, and that's where this variation is going to come in to give a bit of character to our structure. There's also one thing that we need to consider is we talked about supporting this kind of heavy structure here. We want to make it look realistic, and typically what you'd have in a situation like this is some form of pillar or structure to help hold it up. So if we go back to our basic blocks, I think we do have ourselves, we have this kind of support pillar here that we can use. And we're going to be a little creative with how this works. So if we just drag this into the world, we could use it like this, but I think what we're going to do is to make it look a bit more realistic to me. I think if we flipped it upside down, like that gives it a bit more of a better look to it, I feel, where you've got this lower section against the floor and then it's holding the entire of that top section. Now what we can do here is this corner piece now is kind of clashing with it a bit. So we might want to remove that corner piece so that it works a bit nicer. But it's really up to you. I guess you a bit of trial and error here to work out exactly how you want it. I'm going to just stick with that now so we can move on. So let's just add another one over here. So I'll select this, I'm going to hold Alt. I'm going to drag the green arrow to bring it across. And excellent, there we go. I'll just remove this corner piece like I did before. So now it looks like these are actually being supported. Okay, that is good. Okay, it does impact the view a little bit from the window, so these are things you want to consider, but I think it looks good. I think it makes it look a bit more realistic for me as well. Alrighty, so we've added our support structure, we've added our armor pieces, and now it's time to consider our variants on each of the pieces. So let's start off with variation on some of the basic blocks that we added. So within the basic blocks folder, you'll find the variations folder. And this is where we basically have quite a lot of assets, but you'll notice a lot of them are pretty much the same asset, but just a bit different. Let me drag a few of these into the world view. So there's one, there's another, third, a fourth, and a fifth. So they're 5 variants of the same thing, right? These are our foundation panels, but you can see that they've degraded at a different amount. So we do have our original one back here, and then we've got 5 varieties that you can use. This one's taken a bit of wear and tear. This has the panel completely ripped off. This one's just almost like it hasn't taken damage. It's just a variety where it doesn't have the kind of metal on either side of it. This one's taken a bit of damage, and this one has lost all of that top metal covering completely. And you notice they actually have a bit of variety on the sides as well. So if you do happen to build a structure that isn't just flush to the floor and you want to have maybe an elevated section where the foundation comes up a bit higher, then you can get variety on the sides of these sections too. So now it's really about, I'm not going to go through in a super kind of intense amount of detail here because I'm just showing you how to do it, but this is really where you can take some time to fine tune exactly how you want it to look. So for us, we'll just add in, I'm trying to think, perhaps for this this doorway one, we might have it looking a little, yeah, we can make this one look a little bit different because this is going to be seeing a lot of kind of when people walk into it as well. We want it to stand out and look a little bit different. So let's choose this third one in here. So if I go ahead and select the third one, we can just replace that if we want. And another way you can do it is you can manually just change the mesh of it as well. So if I choose drag this mesh, I can drag it into this property here and it'll just replace it. That's another way to do it if you want. So that way this looks a little bit different for us. But these are on the outside, so they're more likely to take some kind of wear and tear from the environment, aren't they? So we might want to just add I might just click on a few of these. Maybe try not to do them all in a close kind of block to another so that the variety doesn't look like it's repeating. So I've selected around 4 of those now. Maybe we'll choose this corner piece as well, and we'll just replace which one should we use? Let's look at these. Yeah, we just maybe have it as this slightly broken one there. So I'm going to select that asset, and then I'm going to right click on them like I've done before and replace. And now you can see that they've got a little bit of wear on them, which is great. So that's adding that bit of kind of realism there as if it's actually been used, this outpost. And you can do this using all the different variety pieces as well. A handy shortcut, if you're not familiar as well, is when, let's say that I like the look of this one, but I've forgotten which asset it is. So you can go ahead and look at the name of it over here. But a real nice shortcut is you can just press Control B and it takes you to that asset in the content browser as well. So that's a nice way. If you're in a rush and going, oh, I want to add another window wall, Control B, and it takes you straight to where that asset is stored. So that can be handy. Or if you go over to our examples and you see something nice that you want, you can just use Control B, click on it, Control B, and you'll find where it is in order for you to use it yourselves. Okay, so we've got some variety on the outside now. I could probably do a little bit more, like we might just add a bit of flavor here, and maybe we want this one here. So Control B to go to the asset. I'm going to, now that it's selected, I can click here. I can just go ahead and replace that. So there we go. We've done that. So now it just gives a bit more of a kind of purpose to it, I guess, that it looks like it's been lived in. So you can do this for the wall panels as well. Let's go ahead and consider, if we go back to our basic blocks. So before we even go into the variations folder, remember that there was, sorry, not the basic blocks, my mistake. I was going to say for the armor on the outside. So if we go into the armor, remember that there was 2 types of wall that we could use. So let's go against these walls so you can see the difference. We have this particular wall here. So if I do Control B on that, we can see this was the wall 01, but we do have wall 02 as well. So let's click on this one and drag in wall 02. And you can say, there we go. This is the variety here. So this is less of a quality variety of it, but just like a different wall that you can use if you want. So I'm going to add a couple of those, maybe on the, just thinking where there might be some maintenance. So maybe around the back of the building is where there's some kind of maintenance hatches. So we'll replace these like this. So we can get those. We can, like, people could go and interact with these sections. Okay, so that looks fine for me. And then now that we are at a point where our armor has been varied a tiny bit using the different types of walls, we can actually now go into the variations folder. If we go into here, we can see, okay, we've got variances again. So we've got a damaged wall frame. We've got 2 different types here. So let's go, trying to think. Yeah, let's just look down here for a second, see how it looks. So if I wanted to try this damaged one down here, so let's add that in. There we go. You can see now that this has completely had that panel kind of torn off of it. And it does kind of match with the damage here. So perhaps there was an attack against this section, or perhaps something fell down on this section and caused damage sometime, or in a storm perhaps. So yeah, it's up to you how you want to tell your story, but you've got a bunch of different assets here that you can use in order to try and tell that story. Okay, now another thing we haven't considered is on the inside. If you remember, these walls were our basic blocks. So if I press Control B, it'll take me to the originals that we used. Now, if we wanted to, we could go into variations, and we've got a bunch of variations in here. These are the foundations we were looking at earlier, but there are a few different things that we can use in here as well. So if I was to type in door, it would show me the variation we have for the door. If I was to type in wall, you can see we've got some variations for the wall here. So if I was to, let's try this one here. We'll select this and we'll drag in the mesh into its mesh slot. So here we can see it still fits in. You can see that this, it'll fit in with the rest of the walls, but it just look like it's been damaged completely. And you can see to the kind of underneath of it where you got the outside panels and some pipe work as well. So yeah, have some thoughts about where you would want to add this variance and where it makes sense within your own structure. Okay, so we can add a bit of variety in that way. And you may have noticed that there was an option to have a pillar as well, one of our support pillars, I think there was. So if yeah, you can see that we've got a damaged one there. So why don't we change maybe this right side one? And I'm going to replace it with this mesh instead. And then we can see that it's really kind of been damaged, but that does help us. We mentioned earlier that our view was limited, and maybe that suits us to have that so we don't block as much of the outside, but still have that supporting structure. It does look a little bit damaged though, so make sure that it fits in with the narrative that you want to tell. So I'm going to leave mine like this. It seems that this side of the base is taking more damage than this side, and that's how I'm going to have mine. Okay. So now that we've added the variety there, it's probably worth us kind of organizing our files before it gets out of hand again. So let's think about this. There may be a couple of these that belong in the base folder as well, the basic blocks. So I'm going to just go through, and these primitive, these support pillars, I'm going to go ahead and move those into my basic blocks. I think they belong there. These foundation, I should probably get rid of these foundation pieces. So let's go ahead and select these and get rid of them. We can probably get rid of this example as well. So let me just go ahead and do that. All of the building blocks of what we've had while I was showing how it works. Brill. And then what have we got here then? So if I just minimize these folders, we've got all of these out here. So we've got our corner pieces. So our corner pieces, they belong to the outside armor. So I'm going to drag those in like that. We've got our door walls. If you're wondering where it is, oh, sorry, I just realized. Okay, I made a mistake there. I was taking them from my step 2 example. So I moved all of these pieces from the step 2 example folder into my armor. Mistakes happen, it's not a problem. So 2 ways to get around this. I could either select them and drag them back, or I can press Ctrl Z and press Ctrl Z again, and it'll move them all back in there. So sorry about that. That may have confused you. Okay, let's minimize that folder. And this is where we're looking at working with, okay, the corner pieces that we added into this. Okay, bro. So I'm going to select all these corner pieces. These belong in our armor folder. And then we'll have a look. We've got some more armor. So you can see the ARM in the name of it. That will probably help you know which ones are armor. So we'll select those. I'm going to go ahead and drag those into my armor as well. And then what have we got? We got some foundations. So when you replace it, when you do if you remember, we were replacing before by right clicking and saying replace selected actors with, it will move it out of the folder that it was in before and just place it back in your level. So it's worth being aware of that. So let's go over these primitive pieces. These are the variances that we added in. So we're going to select these and we're going to move those into that armor folder as well. So move to armor. Now the only thing I'm considering is, did I accidentally move the support pillars from the example 2? No, I didn't. Okay, everything's good. So now we've got our basic blocks and we've got our armor and it's nice and tidy. We don't have any loose pieces. Alrighty, now we're going to be looking at moving on to step 3 now, and this is why it was really important when we were building in step 1 to really think about the purpose of our base. So let's press play and have a little walkthrough, shall we, and see how it feels at the moment. It's always important to do this to make sure that you're play testing as you go along, make sure it feels right and that you don't come across any issues that you hadn't foreseen before. Okay, so let's walk in. We can walk in nice and smoothly. It's a little dark in here. We definitely will add some lights in a little while. Okay, this is fine. So I think we talked earlier, we'll have a counter on the right here where people can check in their equipment. We'll have a little seating area over here. There might be another area for people to maybe get some food or something over here or just sit down. And then as we come up the stairs, we've got this nice view across here where we can see the hills in the distance. We talked about having maybe a resting area here, so we'll build that up. And then over here, we'll probably leave a lot of this empty. It could be a functional space, or we don't have to decide everything right now, but we'll probably add maybe some supply chests in here where people can resupply. But other than that, we just then need a door out here so that we can get onto the roof as well. So we've got a few things to consider now. Now that we know the layout of our kind of interior, that can help us think, okay, what type of assets do we need to convey that to the player? So for example, if downstairs we're having this area where people will check in, then maybe we want some form of counter across here. We'll need some form of seating here. So it gives us an idea of what we want to place into the world. And if you're lacking inspiration for this, sometimes it can be good to go and have a look at what assets are available, and you can use those to help build the environment that you want to make. So if you go into the decorations folder, so this is in Outpost Building Set Decorations, you can see that we've got quite a lot of things in here. So we've got things that can go on the outside of the building. We've got some beds, we've got some chairs, we've got some counters, we've got a ladder, we've got pipes, we've got handrails, we've got a sink, we've got a toilet, everyone. There we go, wonderful. We've got some modular seating that can snap together, which is nice. We've got some pipes and wires. So this will give you an idea of what tools you've got available so that you can start thinking exactly how you want to build up these different areas. But that's why it was important for us to think about this early on, because we want to make sure that when we get to this point, while we've got all of this nice armor and variants, that we don't want to rip the whole building apart just so we have a bit more room. It's not the end of the world if you do want to change it as you go, but that's why we recommend thinking from the start of the purpose of the place that you're building. All right, so next step then is we're going to be adding in decorations, and we're going to start bringing this to life. The first thing I'm going to do then is create a decorations folder in my Outpost ready for these new assets that we're going to be adding in. I'm also going to drag my details panel back up to a reasonable size. Okay, so right click on my Outpost, create a subfolder. We're going to call these decorations. And then this is where we're going to be adding these new actors that we're placing in. So as we saw, there's quite a variety of things that you can add. So maybe we should start with a little bit on the exterior. We talked earlier about how we may want to have a ladder that goes up to the top of the roof if we need to maintain any of the equipment that we're going to place on the roof as well. So equipment, for example, we might want something like this up here. If we're talking about outposts, if there's many outposts on this planet and they need to communicate with each other, maybe some equipment like this is going to be suitable. You can rotate it around, make sure that it's pointing in the direction that you want, and maybe we'll have two of these next to one another. So let me just hold Alt, drag it across. Yeah, maybe we'll rotate it so both the antennas are kind of close to one another like that. That looks fine for me. Okay, so then we'd need a way to get up there as well. So let me go ahead and add in this ladder, sorry. So the ladder, as much as it may look like a ladder, it's worth remembering this is purely cosmetic at this point. So you're not going to be able to just walk up to this ladder and press a button to climb up it. That is something that the people who develop the game would need to work on then, is to have an interaction system where you can press a button to get onto the ladder and then change the control scheme. So you press W to climb up and S to climb down. But this is just purely cosmetic for this part of the course. Now, one thing we notice when adding the ladder is the snap values don't quite work for us here, because the ladder is going to be in the wall if we do that. So this is one of the few times where you can either turn off the snapping completely, and then you can just manually drag it out. So if I click and drag, you can see it comes out, and then you can leave it when you think that it's at the right spot. That's one thing you can do, or you can just change to a lower grid snapping value if you prefer. But that looks almost fine to me. You can see it's still stuck into the wall a little bit there, so I'll probably just get it so it's flush against that section of the wall there. That looks good enough for me. Okay, so we've now got our ladder up on top of the roof. Excellent. And then we can see there's a few other units. If you don't know what they are, there's two things you can do. You can either double click on them and it'll open it up. Let me just drag this tab up to the top so it snaps. You can see there we go, that we've got almost like an air conditioning unit to get, or maybe to filter the air before it comes in. So we got one of those that you could use. What else have we got in here? There we go. This looks like possibly some ventilation. So if you're unsure, you can just open up the asset and look at it. Or if you want, there's no harm in just dragging it in and having a little look how it looks. And you'll notice at this point, I'm realizing, I don't have my snapping on anymore. So remember that you can just toggle it on and off with this button here. But yeah, you can just add things in and see how they look and how they feel and where they would fit in with your building and decide where you want these things to be placed. It's really up to you how you do it, and I'm not going to spend much longer doing it on this example because really we want you to be thinking about how you would make your outpost look real. So I'll add a couple of things quickly. So maybe we'll get some of these aircon kind of units, if you will, on this back wall. So let me just place them roughly where I think they would fit. Yeah, they look fine by here. So let me just chuck a few of these on this back wall maybe. Yeah, maybe we'll have one here and one there. That works fine for me right now. One thing we might want to consider is a rail. So we might notice that if we played it and we came out here, as much as it's nice, oh, we have a ladder to go up and we can go up to that top, it might be easy to fall off. And as much as in our game we're fine, there's no damage or health system in this game at the moment, that might cause a player some damage, or it'd cause a human maybe some damage falling that height without expecting it. So it might be worth us thinking, do we want to put a little rail in there to stop people falling off accidentally? And we've got a few different rail systems that you can play around with if you want. So you can see in here we've got a generic railing. So you could add a couple of those in. You might want to change the snapping value to something lower and figure out the right place for it. We also have some larger ones that might work better. So it's really up to you how you decide you want to go ahead and do that. We also have a few things like we might have a waste section. So we've got a few of these little kind of canister looking things, and you can be creative what you want these to be. You know, they're not tied to a particular purpose. So you can work out how exactly you want these to work, whether they something that's up on the roof, whether it looks like some machinery inside, or whether you want to say this is a waste bin or something. You know, it's up to you how you use these. We have some kind of pipe decorations as well. So it could be an idea that if we use some pipes inside of the building, so there are some assets for some pipes that you can place against walls, like this one here. Oh no, this is a good like a support structure that we can use. Let me just find the pipe. Yeah, so we've got some pipes in here. So if you do choose to use these pipes inside of the building, you can always kind of fit these things together then, so it looks like the pipe inside actually goes through and gets filtered outside as well. So it's really up to you how you use those. Obviously you need to be careful how these fit together and make sure that they snap together nicely. But yeah, there's loads of things here that you can really use to bring your building to life. And if you want inspiration, do remember that we've got that example that we've set up for you already over in the step 3 example. We'll go over and have a little look now, shall we? We've got this example set up already that you can come and see how some of these assets were used. And you can take some inspiration from that if you want. Okay, so let's head back to our outpost. And let's carry on adding a few things in here. So I'll probably get rid of most of these. Maybe I'll just leave this on the outside as you go in. That's fine. And you'll notice, because I have a smaller snap size now, that's really kind of a good idea. When you're fine placing things, you don't want everything to look a set distance apart. You want it to look a little bit more realistic, right? So you kind of want to have a bit more precision about where you're placing things when you're adding decorations in. But okay, so we got a few floating pieces that when we were having a look earlier, so I'll just get rid of these. Let's say that's okay for our exterior at the moment. And then let's have a look inside of what we can do as well. So inside there will be, if we think about the main structure first, so we might have some support structures that I accidentally brought one of these out earlier, but you see this girder here. If we bring this in, we could place that here, and that then acts as a kind of a support structure for this piece. So there we go. Like as you come in, this looks like it's holding up this section here, and where you might want to rotate it to fit with the kind of angle of the stairs. I think that probably works fine how it is there. But yeah, we could leave that like that. That's no problem. And then maybe we'd have some pillars in here as well, because this is quite a big open space. It might be fine, but if you wanted, you could always just add a couple of these pillars in here. Now what I'm going to do probably at this point is switch back to my 160 so I can kind of snap to this grid a bit easier when I place these things in. So there we go. Now when I move them, I don't have to fine tune it. I can stick to this kind of grid size that we've been using thus far. So I'll just put these across here so we've got a bit more kind of structure in this room. I did say this would be like a resting section, didn't I? So maybe at this point we should add some interior walls. So this is less decoration, this is more the structure of it. So I think we'll be going back to our basic blocks here. We got a window wall. We kind of got like this glass divider panel. Let's see if we can make this work. So I've added this in. Let's just rotate it around. And adjust my camera. I'm a little bit too close for comfort at the moment. And then we can just place it where we want. Okay, cool. So yeah, if we say we have one there, and maybe we will have yeah, I think this could work. Let me just type in interior. See what have we got in here? We've got interior doorway as well. Yeah, let's use that here. So if I was to place this by here, we'll rotate that around. What you can see about this interior doorway is it's got that panel either side of it without that insulative layer as well. So we're going to go ahead and place that next to there. I'll tell you what, for now, let's just add another glass panel in, shall we? So we'll move this across, rotate this into the right place, and we'll just position it there. Actually, I tell you what, I'll rotate it. As you can see, the pivot point is meant to be on the square that it's surrounding. So there we go. That works a bit nicer for me. So this can be a little station where people can maybe get some rest and clean up if they want. And we can add indoors if we want to have a little bit of privacy as well, I guess. Okay, so that's that internal structure ready. We'll probably think about down here. I did say maybe having like a bit of a divider or a counter here. So this is going to be probably in our decoration section because it's a kind of an actor or an object that we're placing inside. It's not part of the walls. Let's see what we've got in here. So we've got maybe a cabinet that you could use that if you want as just a counter where people could be behind of it talking as people come in. You could maybe chuck a few of them next to one another if you wanted. I'll probably just place this against the back wall here. And again, this is where I want to maybe change my snap size so I can make sure that it's placed in a sensible location where it's not clipping against the wall, but it's also placed in a location that makes sense with what we want it to do or what the purpose of that object is. Okay, so we've got maybe a cabinet. We're talking about this is a place where people hand in equipment. And then we also, is there I think there is in here. Let me just have a little look through. I think is it a counter maybe we have in here? Yeah, there we go. We have a counter. And this is a taller structure. And this to me looks like something where you could, a window where someone would come up and, they could ask for resupplies, or maybe they hand over their equipment before they come in like we talked about earlier. So I'm just going to place this one in where I see fit. I think this will probably work around there. If we want, we could always just sneak it a little bit across by there. Yeah, I think that's probably a better fit for us. And at this point, maybe you can decide whether or not you want these shelves and that. Is that going to be the side of the people coming in, or is that going to be the side of the people who are working the other side of this? So I'm probably going to rotate it around so that, as you come in, there's no drawers and that for people to access, but the people working here can access the drawers and stuff. That makes sense. And maybe we need a little chair this side where people could then sit. So let me just search for chair. There we go. We've got a chair here. So I'm just dragging this in. Again, I'm not using large snapping size because we want to place this a little bit more organically. With our rotations as well, it might be a good time for us to bring this down so that, again, we can get slight kind of off angles to make things look a little bit more organic for us. Okay, so we'll leave that chair there. That looks fine enough for now. Now, we did speak about maybe having some seating, like a waiting area over here. So have we got anything? Yeah, we do. So we have these seating parts here, and the nice thing about these is these are modular as well, if I remember correctly. So let's go let's check this on 160 for now and drag these in. So what we've got is we've got a corner piece, and then we've got a longer 2-piece, and then we've got a single piece as well. So you can create custom configurations with these. You'd need to snap them together, so we need to find use a lower snapping size, but you can bring these right next to one another and combine them so that it looks like one continuous piece of furniture. So it's really up to you how you do this. This might be a bit long for what we need here. And also I think I'd probably have the curve on the other side. So I'm going to delete these pieces and just start again. So I probably, to start off, I'm going to go back to 160 just so we can get this in originally. Rotate it around 180 degrees. And we'll probably just get a single chair maybe. Rotate this around 180 as well. We can see that we're going to have to change the snapping size in a moment to get those a little closer. And yeah, I think, is there going to be room for I think we'll just try a single chair either side at the moment. So we'll do that. We'll rotate this around 90 degrees. Okay, brilliant. So what we need to do now is just position these correctly. So I'm going to go to a smaller snapping size. I'm going to just bring this up closer to it. Make sure we're happy with that. Again, you can take your time and make sure you're happy with the precise position of these things. I'm just going to try and do this a little bit quickly just to make sure that we're getting through and seeing a few examples of things set up. Okay, so I say that. I'm being fussy though. I need it to line up. I think it looks better when it's lined up. Okay, great. So now that we've got those three things together, I'm just holding control. I can select them all at the same time. And then I'm going to just position them in this corner where I want them to be. Okay, so we can just position it like that. Now we could extend the seating area there maybe. Yeah, I tell you what, why don't we replace this with the double chair instead? And we'll move this across a little bit. Because I feel we're not blocking the stairs. It's important to make your player know that they got, room to walk through this. You don't want them really having to struggle to navigate through. But I think that extra bit of seating makes sense and it doesn't block the stairway. So we're going to go for that there. Okay. If we wanted, we could try and extend one more here. It's up to you. Up to you whether you think that looks right or not. Or whether we use another one of those by here. But for now, we'll leave it there. This is our kind of waiting area. Okay, and then we did say perhaps there would be a place for people to eat over here. So you'll see there's a few other things that we've got in here. I think we've got some stools. So we could add a few stools in if we want. So let's just drag one in by here. We'll maybe add a few of them next to each other. Again, if you want to make it look a bit more realistic, if these get moved, then you might want to have some on some slight off angles. And you might want them to not be exactly lined up, to have them a little bit off. But if they're meant to be bolted to the ground, then they probably would be perfectly lined up. So things to consider as you're building it. And then we probably have some kind of counter that we could use, or a high table. Yeah, what about this by here? Yeah, this could be like a table that looks the right size for these stools. So again, we can just place this close enough to the wall that makes sense. And then these stools could probably go a little bit closer. So I'm going to hold control, click on each one, and then we're going to just drag them a little bit closer. So there we go. We've got a little section over here. And if we wanted to, we've got some space. We may want to just add another one next to it, And then we can just add in a couple more of these. Oops. Okay, so I accidentally had the table selected. So I'm just going to do Control-Z to undo. But yeah, I just want to copy this stool across. Like so. And this is where we talked earlier about, if this is an outpost that has been abandoned, then, maybe some of these could be, fallen onto the floor, and you can work out exactly the placement of these, how you'd want them to be positioned as a result of that, But it's kind of up to you how you want your outpost to function. Okay, so we will carry on upstairs then at this point. We still need some lighting, but we'll do the lighting last. So at this point we mentioned there might be a place to maybe a shower or a bed. So we can see that we've got some beds in here. I'm just going to switch my snap size to 160 again. Add in one of these beds here. So I guess we could have it either way really, but I'm thinking maybe if we had it up against the wall. I mean, if you wanted to, you could change this whole kind of section up here to be a bunch of beds for people to rest if that's the purpose of your outpost. But for our purposes, it's not the main function of the outpost. So I'm just going to have the one bed in here. Let me just place that there. You see there's a few varieties of beds as well with different, with the kind of bedding is a bit more of a mess as well. So feel free to experiment with those. And then do we have like a chest or a storage box or something that we could use in here as well? We probably do. Let me just locate it. Yeah, here we go. We've got some boxes here. So we got one that looks a little bit like this. We also have this one, which is a little bit lower. Yeah, I think having one a bit lower next to the bed would probably work nicer. So let me just go and place this one up by here. I like that idea that, you know, you could rest, you know, any essential equipment on the side of you when you rest. That works. And then maybe we'll have a little kind of wash basin or something for people to wash with as well. So we can just whack this on the wall by here if we want. Okay. And make sure it's snug against the wall where we want it. Okay. So at this point, it might be worth us testing. Does that feel right? So remember, you can play an editor. Make sure it feels good for you. So we're going to walk in. Walk in, there we go. We've got this. This is about the right height. I feel that the sink's at the right height. And then we've got our bed. Yeah, this looks fine. No big problems so far. These kind of support structures give a nice kind of bit of variety in this room, so it's not just one big expansive space. Okay, cool. Happy with that so far. Okay, and then we said this top section could be like where there's a bit more of a purpose to the outpost, and I'll leave that for people to come up with their own ideas. But maybe we'll just add a bit of a table in the back with some chairs just to give us something up here for this example at least. So if we type in table, you can see that we've got the taller table, but we've also got this kind of wider table here. So this could be more of like a meeting section. So, I mean, if we wanted to have a big meeting section, we might need to get rid of some of these pillars, for example. So we could chuck some tables in the middle then and get some chairs scattered around them. So if we add in a few of these chairs, put these around the table as if people are having a bit of a meeting perhaps. So there's different ways for you to set this up and it's really up to you. I'm just going to do this quickly just to get a bit of an idea. Now for me personally, I think what I'll do is I'll probably put these select all of them at once, move to my select and translate, and I'll just probably position them a little closer to this corner. And there we go. So it's not like we're blocking the way out. And it looks like those chairs have enough room for people to come in and sit down. Okay, so we'll leave that as it is, but as a result, I think we probably will keep that pillar that we had here. Does that work still here? Let's have a look. Maybe we should press play and see whether it feels right. So for me, really, I feel that pillar is a bit too close, right? So either we redesign where the table's going to be or we take out the pillar. I'm going to take the easy route and remove the supporting pillar at the moment. But okay, so that works. So now we're at a point where we have our upstairs set up. We've got this lovely viewing kind of gallery over here. And then we can go up onto the roof, as I said, if we need to repair any equipment. So I think what we're looking to do now is really think about atmosphere and how we want this place to kind of feel. Now, if it was abandoned, perhaps there wouldn't be any lights that are working, or maybe there'd be some flashing lights, like an alarm light or to indicate that something's wrong. But if it was a functional outpost, then perhaps it's going to be well lit and make it look very kind of presentable. But lighting in a game isn't just about, you know, making sure players can see everything. Sometimes you can use lighting to guide the player to the points of interest in your level. And so we need to keep that in mind when we're placing these lighting objects. So before we move on to lighting, let's go ahead and tidy up all this decoration that we've put in. Do you remember we created a decoration folder earlier? So I'm just going to select all of these. You see everything that we've been adding in here. And we're going to move these into our decoration folder. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to say move to at the bottom and move it into decorations. Now there's a couple of things in there that maybe they don't quite count as decorations. For example, I think maybe these interior walls that we've got here are maybe not quite decoration. They're more part of the building. So I might move those into my basic blocks. It's really up to you, as long as you know where to look. So let me move this into my basic blocks. Okay, I'm happy with that. Bro, right, so let's think about our lighting next. And I think for me personally, I'm gonna, even though the lighting is kind of classified as a decoration, I'm gonna just create a new folder for them just to keep it separate. So right click on my outpost, create subfolder. Let's just call it lights for now. And we're gonna find these lights, make sure you remove anything that you've tried filtering by before. It can be easy sometimes to leave it in accidentally. And then when you go into another folder, you're like, oh, there's no assets in that folder. But so just make sure that this filter doesn't have a word in it when you don't mean for it to have a word in it. So I'll delete that. And we can see within this functional folder, then we have a few things that we can add in here. So we have doors and we have lights. So we're going to go ahead and add some of these in now. So let's start with the door. The door's a bit more obvious. So facing the front of my outpost, I'm going to drag this door asset. What we can see right now is, first off, I don't have my snapping set correctly. It's important to remember to do that. So let's go ahead and do that first. I'm going to put 160 on. We're going to drag this in. Oh, and it snaps just into position. How lovely. Okay, so the second thing we notice is we've got this kind of yellow box around. And this is because this is a functional actor. So far, we've been looking at just these static mesh actors mostly, which are just, they just exist. They're just displaying a non-animated 3D model, if you will. So they're quite straightforward. But this actor is a little bit different. It has a bit of logic tied to it. And we don't need to worry about how it works. But essentially what happens is if the player walks within this bounds, the door will open and you can walk into it. When you leave these bounds, the door will close. So it just acts as an automatic door. So that's how we're going to use it. So let's try that out, shall we? I press play. I click on the window and then I walk up to it. The door opens. I can enter and it closes behind me. I go to leave. It opens. Isn't that lovely? Okay, so we've got our door sorted. I think we could probably do with a door up here as well. So let's go ahead and add that in and rotate it into position. I think that is looking good. So let's see how that feels now when I'm inside. If I want to leave, yeah, that makes sense as well, doesn't it? Excellent. Okay, cool. Now, I mean, we could try and add a door in for the interior doorway, but I think for now, we're going to leave this open. These work kind of best as our interior to exterior doors, like going from inside to outside. So yeah, we'll leave this as an open space at the moment. I mean, it's just sleeping in a wash basin. It doesn't require too much privacy. So I think we can leave that as it is. So we've got our functional doors in. And then what we want to do, so we'll probably move those to our decoration folder. So let's go ahead and we will move it to decoration. If you want, you could make a folder called functional if you want and put those in. Okay, so next up, we're going to add our lights. So you can see we've got a blue light, we've got a flashing red light, and we've got a yellow light in here that you can use. So just to see how these work, we're going to use a different snap size for these because we want to kind of fine position them. We'll just drag them in to begin with so you can see how they work. So I've added in a yellow light here. You can see the type of light that you're going to get off of that. A blue light. This is more of a kind of bright white light, if you will. And then what we've got is our flashing red light that you could use if something to look like maybe some alarm or something has been going off. So you're welcome to use these however you want. And with lighting, there's often a kind of discussion around the use of cool lighting, like blue lights. They look a bit white, but it's effectively a kind of blue undertone to it. And that's more of a cool color. And then we have these kind of warmer yellow tones. And using those creatively around your level can help you kind of separate places out or create a kind of sense of warmth and comfort versus something a bit more clinical. So yeah, it's up to you how you want to light your area, but what I'd recommend is thinking about what areas you want the player to notice when they walk in. So for now, let's start with just the yellow light, and we'll reposition this up towards the roof. And you can see, because if I was to delete that asset now, you can see the light that it adds in. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo it. So it adds a little bit of light in here. It's not a crazy amount of light. It's not blasting the room with light. But if we take a bit more control over this, we can move this down. You can see that based on how close the light is to the floor, it's going to be brighter. Now, I don't recommend you place your lights low because it's going to be weird having these light assets just floating in the middle. But what we can do is we can just move it up to the roof here. Kind of attach it where it looks like it makes sense. And then if you want, you can change the intensity of the light down here. So you can see in the properties, I've clicked on my yellow light, where we have the transform and move things around like we saw earlier. For lights, we have the light intensity, and it's in here. We had it set as 1000, but if you feel you need it a little bit brighter, you can take that value up. Let's type in 2000, and that's a little bit lighter. If also you want to change from using the kind of natural yellow warm light that we've got, you can also change the color of the lights in here if you want. Like I said before, if you want to reset anything, just press these yellow arrows and it'll go back to its default. So now that we've learned about how to place these in, it's about thinking, where do we want the player's eyes to be drawn to when they enter the building? So let's play. Let's walk in. And at the moment we've got a bit of light in, it kind of lights up the room nicely having one in the center here. But this is a focal point here because this is going to be where you would kind of check in when you enter the outpost, right? This is more of a waiting area. I guess we'd want it to be a bit warm here. And then maybe we would want to draw some attention to these stairs so players know, oh, there's a section to visit upstairs as well. So let's start with that. So I'm going to try placing in one of these blue lights behind this counter. Okay, so let's just place it up towards the roof. I'm going to rotate it around 90 degrees. We'll move it across, get it into position. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that the mesh looks right and it's not kind of clipping through the ceiling too much. That looks about right. So for me, that looks a little too bright at this point. But it definitely does. When we walk in now, you're going to notice there's something you're meant to do on the right. You can even see before we get there, the light pouring through is giving you a bit of a, oh, what's this? So it's really interesting how you can use light to help guide your player and to kind of influence what they're going to notice. We're going to just take this intensity down a little bit. I'm going to change it to 25. See how that feels. It's still a little bright. We'll maybe take it down a little bit more. Let's try 10,000. Okay, and how does that one feel now? Let's play. We'll walk in, and there we go. Yeah, so it lights up to imply, hey, something's happening here. This is a point of interest, but it's not quite as overwhelming as it was before, but it definitely catches the light of this surface as you walk in, which is good. Okay, great. Now let's add some warmer light to this area over here. So maybe the center light that we had, let's try and move this perhaps across into this section. Because this is where people will be, you know, they might just be having a little break, or they might reconvene here before they head back out after getting some rest at this outpost. Or maybe there's a queue here and so they wait while people check in equipment. So this looks nice. It kind of gives a bit more of a warm kind of light here. If I press play, we've got a slight contrast as well between this is a kind of functional area and then this is a more social area. Okay, that could work. And then we want to also draw attention to these stairs that we talked about as well, right? So again, up to you how you want to do it. I wouldn't add too many varieties of colors to your lights inside. So try not to paint the rainbow inside. Try and use colors thematically and to help them communicate with your player rather than confusing your player. So let's keep it simple. Let's stick to the blue and yellow. Let's try and add this blue light up here. Again, we need to make sure we position it so one, it looks like it belongs and that it's like attached to the roof, and then secondly, we want to position it so that we're happy with where the light is shining. So here, if you're upstairs, it's really obvious that there's stairs here because we've drawn attention to it. From downstairs, again, can you see the difference that we've got now? if I was to hide that light, it still looks nice, but now I'm totally drawn to know that there's another point of interest in this room for me. So we might want to maybe change this to a slightly lower value like we did before, 10,000. You can see it's a lot less dramatic now. So I might keep it a little bit higher. Let's go for 25,000. Leave that there. It is covering 2 floors, so it makes sense why it'd be a little bit brighter. You might question, would you want a bright light right where someone is sleeping? And they're the sort of things that you really want to think about. If you want to make this look believable, you need to think about how it would be to live in this place. Okay, so once we've got that set up as well, we might go ahead and add a few more lights in here. So if this is a like a rest area, I think probably we'd be looking at having a warmer light in here. This is just a place for people to rest up. Again, would you want it exactly above the head when they're sleeping? Probably not, which is why I'm trying to place it here in the middle. And again, it might want to be a little bit a little less intense, just so it's not so bright in that room, but it still draws your attention to it and gives enough lighting to see what's going on in there. Okay, so we've got that. A way to get around this light issue as well is we could change this wall just to be a non-glass wall, and that would maybe fix our issue there. But yeah, for now we will continue, and let's add a few more lights in here. So what else do we want to draw attention to? I think the windows is giving some nice natural light coming in, and also it naturally draws attention with that landscape. But over here you may not notice that there's a balcony going out. In the same way, you may not notice there's a door going out when you turn around. Obviously, you've entered the building, but we kind of want to draw attention to the key points. So let's get some lights above the doors. I'm going to go ahead and add some blue lights in here, and we're going to make these blue lights probably a lot less intense than they are naturally when they come in. So let's just bring these lights up to the ceiling, like so. Maybe a little bit higher if we can. It goes into the roof. Okay, that will do. And we will bring the intensity right down. Okay, and I mean, if we're not too happy with the shape and we want that kind of triangle shape to be more on the door, we could always rotate this around so it draws attention to it more obviously. That's one way that we could do it. I'm just going to position this a little bit more central, like so. Here we go. So I still get the kind of lighting up the door, and we can see how that feels now when we come in. And if we're happy with it, we can then copy and use that same light when we come in. So one thing I'm not 100% is that I see that bright light when I walk in. I'm not 100% I'm happy with it at the moment. That's why it's important for you to kind of play through and work out how you want this to work as you do it. I also feel there should be some light above this section. So we're going to quickly add this warm light. We're going to use our alt and drag technique to just create a new one. We'll just move it across above these benches over here, this kind of stool area. Move that across so we just get a bit of light on the surface. Make sure that people notice that this is an area of interest. And also, if people were here, you'd want to be able to see what's on the countertops. So having a bit of light does make sense there. Okay, so that looks nice. And again, you can see the difference of having cool light and warmer lights rather than just having the same light everywhere. Okay, and then what we'll do is, as much as I'm not 100% about this light up here, let's try rotate it again back 90 degrees, see if that feels any better when we walk in. Yeah, maybe it doesn't feel quite as bad being that way. Yeah, so I tell you what, we'll keep it that angle. But I think we need to just bring it down a little bit. It's a bit too bright at the moment for us. So let's take it down to 5,000. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so now that helps us know where the exits are. So we're going to copy this one. I'm going to use my alt and drag to bring it upstairs. And then just like we used the light to light up the front door, we'll do the exact same thing with this top door that goes out to the kind of balcony area. We'll bring that down here. You can bring it here. So it could work like that. If you want to redirect it so that it points more towards the door, you're welcome to do so. But I'm going to try and be consistent with them. So yeah, we'll go with that at the moment.
Now, the only thing I would probably think is we could do with a bit more light in here as well, if there was, depending on what function this area has. This is where, with this table, you may probably want some light above that, but I'll leave that for your imagination to work out how you'd want to do this. So now that we're done, let's have a little play test through it and see how it feels. And then we can decide if we need to do any iterations on it to develop it a little bit further. Okay, so we enter. Got nice light as we come in. There's a bright light drawing my attention to the right area. This is where I'd need to maybe speak to someone, hand in my equipment. Over here is a small social waiting area where we could sit down. We've got a section over here where people could maybe, again, they could sit down and talk. Maybe they could eat. Maybe they could prepare and fix equipment on these stools. We've got a stool that was fallen over. Again, think about the story. Is it in use? Has someone left in a rush? Anything like that. We notice these stairs immediately when we come in, so we can walk up these. And then we come into this section over here, and we can see, okay, so there's something more further up. We can't quite see as a door, but the light is making us think there's some purpose down here. We've got this kind of warmer area, not drawing our attention massively to it because we didn't want to make it too bright if it's meant to be a resting area in here. And then we see the door here, and we can go out, and this is where we would theoretically be able to access the roof and head out. So yeah, I think overall I'm quite happy with how this has come together. I've obviously not gone into fine details. I just wanted to run through the whole process with you. But what I'd really love to see from people taking part in this brief is to be creative and try and really paint the setting with the different assets that you've got with the lighting, and make sure that you're trying to make the player feel a certain way when they enter this outpost. Now, the last thing that we're going to do is make sure that we've got all of our assets in a nice tidy structure. So I'm going to drag in the lights that I've just added into my lights folder. And then everything that we've added is all within this one big outpost folder that we set up earlier. We've got one light that I missed accidentally. So let me go ahead and drag that into my outpost. Let's make sure we put it in the right folder, into the lights folder. There we go. So drag that into the lights folder as well. Excellent. So we're now at a point where we have completed the 3 steps. What I'd love to see from you is really an attention to detail to try and convey the messages about your outpost that you want. Let's look at the examples that we had from the start. So we had the bare blocks. We then added armor and variation to different panels. And then we have our detail, where we're adding in all the different props and the light. I think it'll do us good now, maybe a bit of inspiration to you, is to see an example where a bit more time was spent to make it. And we'll walk in here and notice all of the finer details. So first off, we see these different panels. We can see that some of these have been worn away. We can see that this window has a bit of a panel covering a bit of the glass, maybe it's broken behind. We can see that we've got some of these units on the outside, where this is probably a vent in order to get pure air inside. Again, if we walk around, we can see there's panels on the outside. We can see there's a balcony up top. So let's walk inside. We see light immediately. So we've got a sitting area here. The light is drawing attention to this table. You see that we've got a hole in the roof here, and the natural light is coming through. You see how the natural light there is lighting up this kind of fan unit on the wall. We move across over here, we're immediately drawing attention to this section where you can see that there's a kind of equipment boxes over in the corner and some place to sit. We've got a very kind of dull light over here as well. This is maybe a counter where you'd be preparing stuff or working on equipment. So you can see the creative use of lights here. Okay, let's take this upstairs then. And as we go up, you can see there's holes in the roof here where you can see the sun is shining in as well, and that's going to create some nice lighting and kind of draw attention to some of the detail that you've got on your wall here. We've got some pipes that have been placed in manually, piecing together those modular pipe pieces, and you can see how great that looks when you combine all these little pieces together and how it just fits in with the environment. We can see the use of that red flashing light that we've got over here as well. We've got some kind of bunking quarters over here. Got some more units along the side cabinets, and looks like there's some equipment being placed inside of there. And again, we've used the light to draw attention to this kind of seating area. So you're starting to see the real advantage of using light and of using the kind of variety of pieces of the wall panels and all of the decorations, and how you can really kind of set the tone and give a purpose to your outpost. We go outside here, we can see there's again there's a balcony rail around here, which is going to stop people falling off. We got some more kind of storage up here. You can see on the roof up here as well that thought has been given to how to make this look like it serves a purpose. And we've got a ladder that would take us up on the roof as well. So I'm hoping that this has given you some inspiration and that you're really excited now to put together your very own outpost. And I can tell you that we're very excited to see what you come up with. Now I wanted to add one bonus section to add to the lighting that we've been talking about as well, and that is to set the natural lighting of the environment. Now as we saw in this example, we have this lovely lighting coming through the roof here that's been broken away, and that really creates some interesting highlights on our wall. But to do this, we really need to think about what direction the sun is coming, and we have control of that. So let's talk about how we go ahead and do that. Let's move over to our outpost. And I'll get a view where you can see the sun here at the same time. Now, in order to move the direction of the sun, or change the direction of the sun, we are going to press Ctrl and L and hold both of those down at the same time. So Ctrl and L at the same time brings up this widget here. We can see there's a pale blue arrow pointing, and that is the direction of the sun. And as I move the mouse around while holding Ctrl and L, I can change where the sun is. Now, as I move it left, I'm pretty much just aiming where the sun is at the moment. I'm moving it around and you can see where the sun is shining in which direction. So if you want to have bright sun in the middle of the day, you can have it right up high. If you want to emulate the sun kind of setting at the end of the day with long shadows, or the sun rising perhaps, you can do that. And the interesting thing about this is it's going to impact what parts of your outpost are then highlighted from the outside. And even more interestingly, if you've got dynamic parts of your building, such as this door opening, you're then going to have parts of this light coming in. So if I wanted to move this light a little bit more, so hold Ctrl and L, I just move it so it's pointing more directly at the building, like this, but just want it in sight. So now if I press play, when I open these doors, one, we get this lovely kind of sun on the windows as we head towards it. We've got the sun setting right over the hill. As we open this door, you can see the sun leads in, and it actually draws us naturally towards those stairs. And so you can use the environmental lighting to really kind of create a bit of atmosphere in your outpost as well. Alrighty, good luck.